Welcome everyone to the November 16th Fisher City Council meeting. I'm going to go ahead and, have a couple announcements tonight. Do we have any announcements, Scott? We should. Oh, there we go. John, you want to take the first one for me?
Certainly. I'll take the first now. Flat Fork Creek ribbon cutting, December 3rd. This is an event you won't want to miss. Our newest destination facility, Flat Fork Creek Park, will open to the community on December 3rd. Details are still being finalized, so be sure to connect with Fishers Parks and Recreation on Facebook and at Fishers Parks on Twitter for updates. We're quite excited to see how residents of all ages and ability levels enjoy this new facility.
Thanks, John. Todd, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, mental health initiative to debut tomorrow. Mayor Fadness and members from the Mental Health Task Force are rolling out the initiative publicly tomorrow morning. The press conference is scheduled to begin at 11 a.m., and residents are encouraged to connect with the City of Fishers on Facebook and Twitter for additional details.
Thank you, Todd. And Rich, you want to handle that last one?
Community encouraged to shop Fishers this holiday season. Thank you. Shop Fishers returns on Saturday, November 28th to kick off holiday shopping right here in Fishers. Over 35 local businesses are offering special deals during the event, and shoppers are encouraged to use the Nickel Plate District mobile app for all the details needed. Shoppers are also encouraged to visit the website fishers.in.us/shopfishers for additional information about the ways you can qualify to win for shopping during the event.
Thanks, Rich. We'll go ahead and get to the agenda now. We're going to go ahead and move things around a little bit, but we're going to start off with the Messenger of Peace Award for our Boy Scouts. Do I have a member of the Boy Scout Troop 303 would like to come up and talk to us a little bit about this award before I give it to you guys? Use the podium.
Step to the mic, please. We want to hear you.
So this award is for all the Troop 303 helping out different places like our charter organization, the American Legion. We help with other organizations too, but we really don't care. We just like to help people out.
So what you're saying is you're a good Boy Scout, right?
Pretty much.
Anybody else from the troop want to add anything? If not, why don't you all come up? I'll go ahead and hand you the award. Thank you. Good job, guys. Thanks, guys, for coming. You get to stay with you. All right. Thank you. And Jody, thank you for reminding me to go ahead and bring those folks up here. I always like doing stuff for the Boy Scouts. I've been participating in that Boy Scout breakfast for a number of years, and Jody's been a big help there, and it's always great to see the Boy Scouts here in Fishers giving back to the community as often they do. I think next is our Fishers City Government Academy graduation. Mr. Mayor.
Actually, Council President Peterson, we skipped one, the Community Partner Award. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to that for a moment.
Sure.
For the record, Scott Fadness, Mayor for the City of Fishers. I've been working on the efforts of becoming a smart, vibrant, entrepreneurial city for quite a few years now, and with your help, we've made tremendous progress. But it hasn't just been a government effort. It's been a government effort, a community effort, and a private sector effort. And tonight, I wanted to take a moment and recognize an organization and an individual who has done just an extraordinary amount of work and been a true champion of all things entrepreneurial and tech related. I met Bill Swords when he came back from Colorado, and he is head of governmental affairs for the state of Indiana. And I actually met him at the State House, where we would normally probably be against one another, and I was working with a fiery redhead, I think, on all things wireless and broadband, Leah McGrath, our deputy mayor at the time, and What we found with AT&T was a reasonable group of individuals that wanted to make the state of Indiana more connected and better for commerce. And from that conversation, I think we struck a kindred spirit. And from that day, I can tell you I've seen Bill Swords and the folks from AT&T over at Launch Fishers about as often as I see John Wexler, and that says something. They've been involved in the creation of our new facility. They're steadfast champions in a lot of our high school fellowship program, and it's just been an extraordinary partnership. So tonight, without further ado, I would like to proclaim the Fishers Community Partner Award to AT&T. And it says, whereas AT&T has been doing business and investing in our community since March of 1879, whereas AT&T has more than 200 employees and retirees that choose to reside in the city of Fishers, and whereas AT&T has invested over $1.8 million in wired and wireless broadband projects in the city of Fishers from 2012 to 2014 to meet customer needs and spur our economic growth, and whereas AT&T has been an enthusiastic supporter of Launch Fishers, our entrepreneurs, and small business community, and planning even greater partnerships at the new Launch Fishers, and whereas AT&T has been a generous financial supporter of Launch Fishers and the Launch Fishers High School Fellowship Program in an effort to spur innovation and empower the youth of our community. And therefore, I, Scott Fadness, Mayor, in the presence of the members of the Fishers City Council, do hereby bestow upon AT&T Indiana the Fishers Community Partner Award in the city of Fishers, and all residents are encouraged to celebrate it. So if I could, I'd like to have Bill Swords and Steve Rogers from AT&T come up, receive this, maybe say a few words about their participation with the city of Fishers.
Mr. President, members of the council, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to introduce my colleague, Steve Rogers. Steve is a Hamilton County resident and our External Affairs Director for Hamilton County for AT&T. It's an honor. Thank you for recognizing us. As someone who served in local government for 9 years, I really appreciate what all of you do behind the desk. There's not a successful city or community in the state of Indiana where there isn't strong leadership behind that. I want to thank you for being a city that gets it. The city of Fishers not only recognizes the kind of innovation and changes going on in the digital economy and the way that entrepreneurism and our communities are developing, but you embrace it, you encourage it, and you welcome it. Mayor Fadness and John Wexler are tremendous ambassadors for your community. Everything that you're doing here in Fishers with Launch Fishers is being noticed around the entire state, but increasingly around the entire country. At AT&T, we've recognized that, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow that partnership, not just with the city, but with Launch Fishers. We'll be making some announcements in the days ahead and in the weeks to come about some really new, exciting things at the new Launch Fishers, including this Thursday morning. Hope you'll pop over to Launch and join us for that. But it's a really neat place. It's a place that's uniquely Fishers, that embraces the future, that embraces innovation, and I think that's incredibly well reflective on the local leadership that all of you have portrayed. So thank you for this honor. We look forward to continuing to be a good corporate citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Moving right along to the Fisher City Government Academy graduation. Dan, making his way from the back of the room.
Good evening, Fisher City Council members, Mayor Fadness, elected officials, and staff. For the record, my name is Dan Domsick, and I'm with the Parks and Recreation Department. This evening, I have the honor of presenting our newest class of Fisher City Government Academy graduates. The Fisher City Government Academy is a program that gives citizens an inside look at how their local government operates. They learn about everything from how our city court operates to how DPW keeps roads clear during winter storms. They do this while participating in this series of classes taught by departmental leaders and experts over the course of several weeks. It is a significant time commitment, and these participants are a phenomenal example for others looking to be more engaged with their local community. Some Government Academy alums have gone on to do other great things in and for Fishers. This includes our many alumni that are serving as part of the Fishers Government Academy Association, who have helped graciously welcome our new graduates this evening. Have continued by working on boards and commissions, serving on the Fishers City Council. Councilor Mueller, thank you. And even founding the entrepreneurship juggernaut that is Launch Fishers. John Wexler, the founder, is one of our alumni. Without further ado, and if Mayor Fadness and Council President Peterson could join me here at the podium, I'd like to present our new graduates. New graduates, if you could please join us by gathering in a group over here near the press table, and then come across when your name is read. We'll hand you your certificate, and then we'll gather over here, and once all the names are read, we'll go out in the lobby for a quick picture. So without any more time here. That's good. Our first up on the list here is Corey Jacobs.
Had that backwards, huh?
A little bit.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it.
Carol Lynch Holman.
Carol, thank you so much.
Libby Gilbert. Gary Bolenbaugh. Brad DeReamer. John Delaney. Nancy Coughlin. Nancy's not with us this evening. Chad Colston. Kathy Kauser. Mark Chase. Susan Bloomer. Marianne Bollinger. Cindy Bolenbaugh. Cindy couldn't make it this evening. Bill Bell. John Schmidtke. Gregory Scholl. Toby Smith. Keith Stark. Ty Price could not make it this evening. Andrea Williams could not make it this evening. Sandra Jones. Mark Kauser. Dennis Renander. Jim Hope. All right. All right. Thank you, Mayor Fadness. Thank you, Council. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, graduates. Happy to have another class through. Okay, moving right along to committee reports. John, Finance Committee. Oh, you want your notes?
We're sharing an agenda night, so we're going to be fighting over the agenda all evening. Just be ready. Pleasure to report back to you regarding our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, which we had on November the 2nd. Just some highlights, and just so everyone, the public knows, this is a public meeting. Anyone can come to it. We do public notice that it is on the calendar, and so we would welcome anyone who'd like to come and be a part of the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. It's your money we're utilizing, so it's an important part of what we do as a council. Just a few items I just want to highlight tonight for council's consideration is the second reading and public hearing regarding a potential sewer rate increase. As many of you may be aware, we are looking at this more for capital investment. We have a number of capital investments to upgrade our sewer system, and something to report. We have not had an increase in our sewer rate in almost 20 years, so certainly something we're going to be considering tonight as a second reading. Also have an opportunity for anybody who wants to to speak about it. Secondly, we talked about issuing a general obligation bond of $1 million for some road repair. It's kind of an innovative way to have some short-term financing, something we will talk about later that Oscar will begin up and presenting about an innovative way to, in essence, borrow money on a short-term basis, do some road repairs, and pay it back within a year. And it's a very interesting and also innovative way to use our funding. We're also talked about using some road impact fees for our 116th Street road improvement of about $800,000. We can use road impact fees for new, but not for repairs. So those road impact fees, again, we'll be considering that this evening as well under our council. And also on the, I believe, and also the city courts, we have some additional appropriation we need to do there as well. If there's anything else on the agenda. Those are really some of the highlights. I know we are meeting tomorrow morning to go over our audit, which is finally have our audit completed, which is great. And our CAFR was published Wednesday, November the 4th. So that is our committee report.
Thank you, John. Is there any other committees? Do we have a sign committee? No? Okay, no report. Okay, we're going to go move to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make.
Okay, motion by Rich.
Second.
Second by John. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move some items around on the agenda tonight. We're going to go ahead and take item 13 and push it up to now. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the sewer 13 and 14 and make 14 number. Okay, 13 and 14 will go first. Where's our sewer item?
It's number 9, Pete.
Item 9 will then end up being 8 on the list. So we're going to push those around to try to bring everything up to the front if council does not have a problem with that.
Pete, just so I'm clear, you're moving the IKEA items both up to the front, and then you're moving the sewer rate right behind it?
Correct.
Gotcha.
So they would end up being 6, 7, and 8, justified pushing the rest down. So with that, we're going to go ahead and look at what is item number 13 on the agenda, but number 6 now. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Council President Peterson. For the record, Scott Fatness, Mayor for the City of Fishers. We actually have 2 agenda items tonight regarding the same subject matter. So I'm going to address the Economic Development Agreement, and then our staff will come up and talk to you about the PUD amendments that would be corresponding with the potential project. As many of you noted, it was well covered in the press last week. We had an exciting announcement with the announcement that IKEA was willing and interested to locate here in the City of Fishers. Certainly by any measure, one of the best retailers in the world, looking to invest 300,000 square foot building at the approximate location of 116th Street and exit 5 on or exit 205 on our interstate. We've been in discussions with IKEA for the betterment of 4 or 5 months. It's a very competitive process. They do not locate everywhere. I think they only have 41 locations across the country today, if I remember correctly. They've been an extraordinary group to work with. The process has moved very quickly and very smoothly. We were competing against places all over the United States as well as all over the world as IKEA decides where they're going to invest their dollars and expand their footprint. The approximate investment that we anticipate IKEA making is at least $40 million. It equates to about 250 jobs. And so tonight, this Economic Development Agreement embodies the relationship between the City of Fishers and IKEA as an entity or an organization. So I want to talk through a little bit about what that Economic Development Agreement looks like, what the risks and benefits are to the City of Fishers, and then address maybe some of the issues on a larger scale around traffic and things of that nature. So first off, what you'll note in here is that the Economic Development Agreement is actually pretty sparse in the sense that there is no TIF and no tax abatement directly granted to IKEA. The only time that a tax abatement would actually come into play is in the scenario where the City of Fishers did not get the road projects done that we had been contemplating for some time. That is certainly a bone of contention, or I shouldn't say a bone of contention, but certainly a concern for any retailer that's willing to invest upwards of $40 million and wants to open their doors, and then because of the road work we have going on, there could be a potential where the road's closed. And so we wanted to put in an economic development agreement that would allow for incentivization for the city to make sure it met its deadline and be fair to their investment. So what you see in the one clause in here around tax abatement is, and I want to be clear about this, we are not granting them a tax abatement tonight. What this economic development agreement would consider is if there was a scenario where these road projects were not complete by July of 2017, then there would be a 2-year tax abatement that would be instigated at that point in order to compensate for the fact that their roads or ingress egress were restricted. We have every intent and every belief that we will have those road projects done in ample time, but this is again part of the economic development agreement to ensure that with their investment comes some surety that they'll have open ingress and egress to the building. Outside of that tax abatement, the only other incentive contemplated in this economic development agreement is a waiver of impact fees, which we believe for road and bridge impact fees equal about $1.6 million. Other than that, there's no additional incentives that the city of Fishers would be considering other than the waiver of permitting fees and impact fees. When it comes to the geographic location of this project, one of the things that our staff considered and in my office certainly contemplated when IKEA knocked on the door and said they were interested in coming to Fishers and they identified the location, when you get past the excitement of the brand, because it is a wonderful brand and generates a lot of excitement, we did think long and hard about what the traffic implications would be for this area. And I think we need to start with some basic assumptions, which is this area that IKEA is looking to locate is zoned for uses like this. They're also zoned for uses like more traditional retail, like a large grocery store or a super Target. Things of that nature are already contemplated in their zoning. Could be a large office complex. This zoning was put in place in the mid-'80s. So this is not a new zoning that we're contemplating here that would allow for a use such as IKEA. So when we started thinking about that, we started considering about, well, as a traffic use case, is IKEA significantly more of a detriment when it comes to traffic congestion in this area than perhaps some other contemplated uses like a large grocery store or other large traditional retailers or a large office? And in reality, when we talk to our traffic consultants, what we learned is that IKEA, in fact, is more of a complement in terms of mitigating the traffic impact of having development there than a lot of the traditional development. For instance, IKEA does not open until 10 a.m. in the morning. So our AM commuters would not be impacted by IKEA's operations. Statistically, they will tell you that between 4 and 6 p.m. is their slowest time period for folks to come visit the store, which also plays well for us. And then 50% of their sales are done on the weekend. So that, along with some analysis by our traffic consultant around what the actual trip generations are predicted to be, we felt fairly confident that if something were to be developed here, that IKEA is actually a pretty solid use for us in terms of mitigating the traffic. Now, on top of that, because we knew this area was always going to be developed, that its proximity to the interstate, Fishers demographics, we knew that at some point, all of this land along the I-69 corridor was going to develop. And we all know that 116th Street and Exit 5 is congested in the mornings and in the PM peak hours. And so as early as the first quarter of last year, we started embarking upon what kind of infrastructure improvements could we look at to mitigate the impact to our commuters every day. And so we were already contemplating a pretty aggressive campaign with the 106th Street interchange, as well as an additional lane going eastbound on 116th Street from Commercial Drive all the way to Cumberland Road. So when IKEA did come to the city of Fishers and say they were considering this area, we did think long and hard about the use. We evaluated it, we investigated it, and we think it is a good use for this area. We thought long and hard about the infrastructure needed to mitigate the impacts on our residents. And we have started in earnest to try to get those projects done as soon as possible. And so tonight, this document in front of you is really the culmination of 4 or 5 months' work of the staff and our team around not only our relationship with IKEA, but just in general our planning for the development that is inevitably going to come to this corridor. We are sensitive to the traffic issues. We're going to continue to be aggressive about dealing with those issues with world-class infrastructure. And I would ask you tonight to consider this economic development agreement with IKEA. I know our petitioners are here tonight, or I shouldn't call them our petitioners, but rather the partners in the Economic Development Agreement are here tonight. They're represented by Steve Harden. I'd ask if they would like to say a few words to please come up, and then we would entertain any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a proud resident of the City of Fishers, a partner in the law firm of Faegre Baker Daniels. I'm pleased to be here representing Project IKEA Fishers tonight. With me from the IKEA team is Mr. Joseph Roth, Mr. Reed Lyons from their consulting firm of Greenberg Farrell, Rick Johnson, and John Karakis, and also Bill Butts from the local engineering firm of Kimley Horn. Reed, if you'd like to come up now. We were going to save a few brief remarks for when we got to the PUD, but since we were invited by the mayor, we'd never not follow his lead. And I'd like to introduce Reed Lyons to you, and he'll have a few brief remarks.
Good evening, members of council. I just wanted to thank you guys very much for hosting us here this evening and for the reception that we've received from the City of Fishers throughout the, I know the mayor said about 4 or 5 months, but we're pretty stealth, so it's been a little bit longer than 4 or 5 months. And your team has been absolutely terrific here with the city. We're super thrilled with the reception that we received from last week's public announcement. And I know that that doesn't happen just by chance. You guys have a well-oiled machine here in the City of Fishers. And we are really thrilled with this opportunity to locate. I think the store will do fantastic in this location, and I do not think that the mayor could have given his remarks any better than he just did. So I will yield the floor at that point, but I just wanted to thank you all very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I don't believe there is a public hearing requirement here, Chris, but can I have a show of hands of people in the audience who would like to speak on this topic? Okay. What I'll ask is, because it's not a requirement, I'm going to ask you to come and state your name and address for the record. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to state as it relates to this particular item on the agenda, the IKEA Economic Development Agreement. If you're going to come up and say the same thing behind somebody, I wish that you would just ibit the person in front of you to save time, since we got a pretty full agenda, so we're not repeating ourselves. We can certainly note the remonstrance, but I will allow folks to speak unless there's somebody from council that does not want to allow that. So I guess at this time I'll open it up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come up, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments as they should to this particular item.
Good evening, Greg Purvis, 12271 Chiseled Stone Drive. If I may be indulged a personal moment, I wish to give my congratulations to Mr. Zimmerman, Mrs. Coble, and Mr. Block on their recent success in the Fishers election. My encounters with them were entirely positive and pleasant, and I hope they continue that way. So I commend them and congratulate them. As to this particular project, there are things I like about it a lot. There are some things that concern me. I like the fact that we're not borrowing tens of millions of dollars to add to our $150 million in TIF debt. I am concerned a little bit because from long legal experience, I know road projects don't always go on time. Things happen that you don't foresee, and I'm a little concerned about the potential financial impact of the penalty tax abatement portion of the agreement. I understand why IKEA wants it. I understand very well why they want it. But I'm a little concerned about the potential impact there, where we could be giving them, depending on the length of delay, a 3-year 100% tax abatement. And that's a considerable source of money. Back to the TIF subject, it is in a TIF district. I do not know if there is any debt associated with that now. If there is not any debt in there, a strong consideration should be given to moving this out of a TIF district so that the taxes from this and other future development go into the general fund for the City of Fishers and for HSE schools. That will have a much more positive impact on the city's and the school's finances than anything else you could do. The biggest concern that I've heard is over traffic, as the mayor has talked about, and notwithstanding those disclaimers, I understand that, particularly in light of the new 106th Street exit from I-69, which will dramatically increase traffic in the area. That will give an additional access point for commercial development along USA Parkway, and that's a good thing. But the bad thing is there is no plan at all for improvements to 106th Street to meet the traffic past the two roundabouts adjacent to it. And that needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. And that is probably my biggest concern, that we haven't thought far enough out other than the immediate area. And again, the delays can come from the project can come from another number of places. It's my understanding that there may be eminent domain proceedings for the people that you're going to move out of 116th and Oak Drive for that portion of the project, and you have to acquire those properties. And if that's not done quickly, that could drag on and slow down the process and put us at more risk for the tax abatement penalty portion of this agreement. But having said that, IKEA is a very popular retailer. It's a great land for the city of Fishers. And there are people that don't like it. That's fine. There are people that like and don't like everything. But I tend to view this as a positive. I have actually been calling for development of this area for 8 years to do something with it, even move the downtown there. But this is a good first step. There are things that I would tweak in it, and I hope you take these matters into consideration. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, members of the council. My name is Steve Mathis, 10888 Sawgrass Drive. I've actually written all of you emails before in the past about issues within the city of Fishers. My concern with this is, again, the traffic, as Mr. Purvis said. But another issue that I have is it seems like the speed with which this has been given to the city of Indianapolis, city of Fishers, and all the people within it. We heard about it last Tuesday, and there really hasn't been a lot of opportunity for the residents of Fishers to weigh in. If you remember back in the spring, the sports complex, there was a series of public meetings, and I recognize that they may not always be necessary for projects like this. But I wish that there would have been a better process for the city council to understand what it is the Fishers residents think and need from this area and from the economic development. I did some talking with people today on my own. Of the people that I talked to, I didn't talk with a lot, maybe somewhere between 10 and 15. They were equally split whether they support or oppose this project. But I do think that there are more people that need to know more information before they can make a good decision about it. So I would encourage you to maybe hold off on this tonight, move the decision to a month later, and give an opportunity for the residents of Fishers to weigh in. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else?
Good evening, President and City Council. My name is Mike LeCure. I live on 116th Street at Spyglass Falls, which is the the first residence as you exit moving eastbound from Cumberland Cumberland 116th Street. So my concern, first of all, I shop at IKEA in Cincinnati. And I think it's a wonderful store. I think it's going to do wonderful things here in the city of Fishers. My concern is the location. I am concerned about the traffic. We already have a significant issue on traffic eastbound and westbound east of Cumberland. If you ever leave our complex at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, or in the evening, you know that it takes a tremendous amount of effort to navigate the traffic. And I know that many of you don't live there, but if you live there, you would understand that it is a significant issue for us. And the last gentleman that was up here said he spoke to a few people. I've spoken to a lot of people. And quite frankly, you probably recognize my name because I send each one of you an email. But there's a lot of people who aren't here tonight who chose not to be here. I can't answer as to why that is the case. But the fact of the matter is every one of them are concerned as well. We're concerned about our home prices, the resale value of our homes. We're concerned because when real estate agents come in, the first thing they tell us that the biggest negative to your home is the traffic on 116th Street. And while there's plenty of arteries that are going to be put in to accommodate the traffic on exit 5 or on 106th Street, that doesn't solve the problem east of Cumberland with the traffic that will increase tremendously as traffic moves eastbound, westbound from the east side of Fishers, from the northeast side of Fishers. And when you look at the traffic situation that we have, the closest exit to that store will be exit 5. And so we will see a tremendous amount of traffic moving in that area. And I'm appealing to you tonight not to say no to IKEA, because I think we need a store like that. I'm appealing to you to move the location to a more appropriate location to take in consideration your residents in this city. I've been a resident for over 25 years, and I love Fishers. My concern here is home sale and the residents and the safety of our school buses, et cetera. So with that, thank you. I hope you will take that under consideration.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Hi, I'm Elaine Viscant, 10734 Northampton Drive, Fishers. I really don't know the process that you take to examine these people that intend to move into the community. I could say that years ago, I worked for Colby's Furniture in Northbrook, Illinois, and they almost reached their 100th birthday before they went bankrupt. And I also worked for a Fortune 500 company that had a major customer from Texas, MCI, that went bankrupt. Has anyone done a credit check with any of their referrals? That's my concern.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Good evening. Oliver Strobel. I'm on 106th Street, 7560. And so, unfortunately, I have the same issues around traffic. I also shop at IKEA. I've been to Cincinnati, and but 106th Street, that place is going to get blasted. You'll have traffic coming across from Carmel. If the airport gets developed, then we have even more businesses popping up there. That's a 2-lane road heading out to the west, and that doesn't seem like a really well thought out plan. And so I hope that plan does get thought out well. And I'm pretty sure that if I had you as my neighbors on 106th Street, you might see it differently. And I know that my neighbors see it very differently. We're not against development, but we're definitely against having an onslaught of vehicles driving down the 2-lane road, and we're definitely not interested in having that turned into a 4-lane road. So I hope that gets at least considered.
Thank you, Oliver. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you for this hearing. My name is Grace Miller, and I live at 11350 Niagara Drive. It is in Fishers, and it's also in Spyglass Falls. I just wanted to ask the committee if, because the traffic is obviously the concern, I'm very excited about IKEA personally, but the traffic, I'm not. As a terrible driver, I would really encourage you to consider the traffic east of 100 of the interchange, and especially that neighborhood. There is a bike path that was going to be an access road. Right now, Spyglass Falls only has one entrance and exit, and that's off of 116th Street. So we are subject to all of that traffic at all times of the day. It's somewhat of a Frogger type maneuver that I make. So it is in your best interest to really consider creating that bike path and moving that bike path into another entrance, because that would allow the Spyglass Falls neighborhood, which is again 116th and Cumberland, to have a second access off of onto Cumberland Street. So right now, it's the only, 116th is the only entrance and exit, and so I would just really encourage you to consider that.
Thank you, Grace. Anyone else wishing to make comment?
Good evening. My name is Brian Estes. I live at 9705 Springdale Drive. I am part of the neighborhood where the houses are going to be tore down that they're taking and working on right now. My question is, I understand that this project is contingent on the 116th Street projects being completed, and I would like to know, is there a final plan for the construction of 116th Street, a landscaping plan, how it's going to affect our neighborhood? 116th Street is going to become 6 lanes, and our little side road is going to become 4 lanes. That's a lot of additional traffic coming right beside our neighborhood that really hasn't. We've heard a lot of ideas, but we have not seen any plans that say this is what we're going to do. This is our final plan. This is how we're going to buffer your neighborhood of the houses that are left after we tear down the other ones. So I'd just like to know if 116th Street is such a part of this plan for it to be achieved without all the additional penalties, then where's the plan? That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and give it back to the mayor.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. In general, I would say that all of the comments, the majority of the comments voiced tonight, are all things that we have been considering over the last several months ourselves. I think Fishers, if you were to go back over the last 20 years and listen to the conversations at this podium about all the tremendous growth we've had, we've always had to weigh the impacts on traffic and what happens to the quality of life for our residents. And I think Fishers has had a history of taking that very seriously and being very aggressive about infrastructure improvements. I think, again, with this project, when it comes to traffic, there are absolutely things that we need to improve. I think we're taking an aggressive approach to fixing those things. I think we need to keep a very mindful eye to the types of additional development that go around this. Like I said last week when this was announced, IKEA is a wonderful component to this development that we're making, but that doesn't mean we want a free-for-all to build anything in this area. And I think the City Council and the Mayor's office needs to work very diligently that this is a development we can be proud of for the long term. And whether that means our world-class infrastructure that we need to invest in, or whether it means architectural standards, or whatever it might mean in terms of our community, we want to be sensitive to those things. As for the financial impact to the schools, which is a conversation we have often, keep in mind that any referendum gets passed directly through. So this $40 million investment, the schools will collect 10 cents of every $100 of assessed value and take that back for their operations. And so there is actually a financial gain for the school system when we bring in developments like this. As for our assurances around the ability to get these projects done, I can tell you, A, we're being very aggressive with our design. We also have every intention in our contracts with the construction folks to put liquidated damages in there that hold the contractor accountable for meeting key timelines. So once again, we're going to try to mitigate any kind of potential risk to the city of Fishers. As for the 106th Street corridor, I think we've been intentional in investing in a roundabout at 106th and Cross Point, 106th and Lantern. We have a roundabout for 106th and Cumberland. We built a roundabout at 106th and Geist. We want to be respectful to the residents there, and we're trying to fix the pressure points in those areas so that we don't have to make it a significant thoroughfare. So we are doing significant investments in that area. As for the landscape plan along 116th Street, our engineering department has been in contact with the residents there that will remain in that development. And at our initial conversation, we want to work with the residents that are going to be there after this project gets done. So whether that's a mound, whether that's a fence, whatever we can kind of come to an agreement upon, even to some degree the ingress egress of their road, whether they'd like a cul-de-sac, whether they'd like it dead-ended, whether they want a throughfare with a road, we want to work with the neighborhoods there so that we can be sensitive to their needs. The reason we haven't come to a conclusion yet is there's not a consensus yet on what they would like to see in that area. But our intent is to work with the neighborhood and ensure that we can put the type of infrastructure there that is suitable for the quality of life that they would like to see in their area. With that, I think I've answered the majority of the comments made tonight. I'd entertain any questions from the City Council at this point.
Any questions or comments for Scott or the petitioner?
Just, Scott, a couple, maybe if you could expand on some of the comments, some of the people who spoke, whether they're in Spyglass or on 106th east of, I didn't get the address, but one could surmise they're east of the Lantern or east of Cumberland. Yeah. And so you articulated very well that this Sunbeam development or this large area of land is already zoned for a variety of appropriate uses. This falls into one of those uses. And that, over a certain period of time, it's anticipated that this would develop with a variety of uses, this being a lower relative intensity use, and would necessitate improvements to 116th Street in particular. Now, our own anticipation of 106th Street interchange was developed well before any particular use was envisioned, like IKEA or others, but for the supporting of the development broadly. But can you comment specifically on the no matter how that area develops, what the insult or the onslaught of traffic further east on 116th and further east on 106th, on a relativistic point of view?
So the first comment I would make is for the folks that live in Spyglass, there is an issue there today. Anyone that drives through that neighborhood and tries to get out on 116th Street would say that that's a challenge. That's something that we as a city need to continue to evaluate and look at. Whether IKEA comes or not, that's a problem that we need to work to try to address because it is a challenge. As for the actual impact that IKEA would have on traffic to the east of its development, I'd ask Steve Fairbach or Jeff Hill to come up and talk a little bit about what they're the engineers, so I'd let them speak to that specific.
Evening. For the record, Jeff Hill, Director of Engineering with the Engineering Department. Like it was pointed out earlier, relative to some other types of developments that could happen in this area near Exit 5, IKEA from a traffic standpoint in particular, farther away or east of Cumberland near Spyglass Hills or Spyglass Falls or other developments to the east, the relative traffic impact is lesser than developments that would be allowed within the development area, the Sunbeam area near I-69. In particular, traffic from IKEA, we found in working with A&F Engineering, our traffic consultant, that a lot of it is a regional type draw. A lot of traffic would be coming from the interstate itself, much higher than office type development or general retail, such that a lot of those trips that the store does generate are going to be on 116th Street near the interstate and not necessarily seeking routes east towards some of the neighborhoods. It was mentioned, I do want to point out, we have been in conversations with the neighborhood Spyglass Hills and Spyglass Falls. There is a stub right-of-way, if you will, that was developed as a sidewalk connector only. Through our engagement folks with the Parks Department, we have been trying to reach out to those neighborhoods to see if there is a connection to be made to find alternative access points to try to help the scenario that was mentioned for those neighborhoods in particular. But again, we just want to stress that with some of the uses that could come to this area where IKEA is proposing to locate, the trips in the AM peak hour or the PM peak hour are less than a lot of these big box retail stores, general retail, and some of the freestanding discount retail.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments from council, questions? If not, I've got a couple. I want to, first of all, thank the folks from IKEA, both Joseph and Reed, who have been just an absolute pleasure to work with, and I continue to hear from staff the utmost professional way that you guys have behaved throughout the process, and I want to thank you for that. We do get a lot of folks coming to the city looking to obviously place their businesses here, and contrary to maybe many beliefs, we do actually turn down some, because I think that sometimes gets kind of missed a lot of times because a lot of it goes beyond closed doors. I certainly want to appreciate all the comments that were made by public, particularly as it relates to traffic. And while we cannot say that any development wouldn't increase traffic. It will. It will absolutely increase traffic. It may increase traffic less than something else, but it's going to increase traffic. But what it does is it brings a vibrancy to your city and town that we as a council have to make a decision on. And the rules changed back in 2008 when we passed a 1, 2, 3 property tax cap. And we have to start relying upon commercial taxation more than we do residential taxation. Or we're going to have a city that's not going to be able to keep up in terms of its world-class infrastructure and all the things that we talk about. So it becomes paramount for us and the council that is here, and maybe some of the older council members that are here, where this development downtown started. And you saw the absolute planning which went on to do that. It was a well-thought-out plan. As it relates to this particular property, all the comments that have been made are absolutely correct. There could have been any number of things that they wanted to locate there, and if they came in there and didn't ask for a thing, we wouldn't even be talking about it here. Right? If they wanted to come and build to our standards and build within the general rules which we set down and they met all the commercial codes that we put in place, we wouldn't even be talking about any of this right now. And you'd still have an increase in traffic and you have all the issues you talk about. Okay, so I want to make sure I keep everybody in mind, and when we're doing these things, we're certainly not doing them in a bubble. We're certainly not doing them any kind of hastily manner. These things are well thought out. They're well talked about. They're well communicated throughout the council. And certainly I want to go ahead and commend staff again for doing a terrific job informing the council of everything that's gone on. I want to certainly compliment the mayor and the legal staff for going ahead and writing an agreement that I think is very positive for the community and I think is going to pay dividends in the long run. If there's no other comments from council, and Brian, I did want to say something to Brian in the one neighborhood. I don't know if Brian's still here, okay? I certainly appreciate what you're talking about in terms of your buffering and everything else, because I'm actually on that road on occasion. Let me give you a real easy example. If you guys got together and would voluntarily annex yourself into the city of Fishers and now become a taxpayer, probably have a lot better argument to get a lot better buffering down the road. Just FYI for future reference, okay? That's just me being the annexation guy trying to help you out long term, okay? If there's no other comments from council, I'll go ahead and call for a motion. Okay, Stuart.
I'm just pleasantly, I never thought I'd hear the words from you saying you're the annexation guy, but I like that, like to hear that little comment. But I think that an important thing here is around, if you look at all the economic development that the city of Fishers and prior to the organizational change, the town of Fishers, the community has done over the last decade, could be a nice period to look back. We've been very thoughtful and very careful in the way different types of economic development opportunities have been structured to protect the taxpayers of the community from projects that might have some negative outcome, but really to benefit the community from really the potential positive outcomes and really hedge ourselves. If you look at this approximately $40 million investment, and I don't mean to make this comment to open up any new negotiations, but when we look at other $40 million investments that the community has invested in to get the right kind of development, we've had a lot more public involvement and public skin in the game. I think we got a partner here who's with IKEA who's got just a tremendous brand essence and following around the world, and what they've asked for to maintain their brand and maintain their building aesthetic is very limited. And frankly, the ask for a $40 million investment in the community, the leverage that they tried to exert was very minimal. And thankful to our town staff and Mayor Fadness for holding the line, if you will, on maybe some things that you never know when you get two parties interplaying on negotiations. So I'd say if you compare sort of the at-risk issues to the city, even if it were to go tremendously negative, which we don't anticipate on the road timing, it's still a very extremely, it'd rank up in the top 1% of economic development deals that the city has done over the last decade. And so those are my reflections on that. So I would say, I look at it almost like what we think, we're not 90% plus that the roads are going to be improved appropriately. This type of development that's going to happen, and they're going to be done on time. And therefore, a developer who's putting in $40 million, they should ask for a little bit of residual concern if the things are going to delay their opening or delay the impact of their opening, and this seems reasonable to me and very appropriate. I have confidence in the staff and that we've got a really strong date out there and confidence that we're not going to have these type of incidents that would give cause to a future abatement having to go into effect. But even if it did, the impact and the benefit to the community would be tremendous. And I think the issue here, what we're looking for is, as this area develops, we need to maintain the traffic improvements so that the quality of life is not deteriorated. I mean, it's already a challenge when there's no promise that the roads are going to get, the quality of traffic is going to get enhanced. But the important thing is here, the plan that the Mayor Fadness and his staff has come up with is there'll be no detriment as I'm looking at it. And so with that, I think it's very proactive and productive proposal.
Thanks, Stuart. John? Looking at, as we look at, one thing, I've had a number of residents reach out to me and talk about traffic. I actually had lunch with a resident who would not let me get a word edgewise and talk about traffic the entire time of lunch. Fortunately, he bought my lunch, so it really was a very worthwhile experience. But you got to think back and think about, I look at when I moved into Fishers, 1992, 116th Street was a two-lane road. 126th Street was a two-lane road, and how we've invested in infrastructure and how previous councils have had the vision to invest in our infrastructure. That's going to continue, and I appreciate everyone coming out and expressing their concerns about it, but IKEA is going to be a great corporate citizens. We're looking forward to have them as part of our community as well. And we're going to continue to work on infrastructure improvements, not only there, but also you talk about folks coming off the interstate. As you may be aware, north of 116th Street, 69 is going to become 3 lanes on both sides up to State Road 38, so there's going to be some other enhancements as well. So I feel confident that we're going to be looking at addressing those traffic issues, but certainly welcome feedback and welcome to hearing from folks to make sure we address all the concerns. Thank you.
Just real quickly, I just want to second Stuart's thoughts. When you look at any kind of agreement, you want to make sure that, from my risk mitigation background, is what is the worst case scenario? And the worst case scenario is we still make out very well in our community. That's the bottom line to what I look at with this. And also, I just want to commend IKEA. I've been in retail 17 plus years. I was in it for 17 plus years, and I've dealt with a lot of retailers. And some are more family friendly than others, and I believe IKEA fits Fishers, fits the family environment, even the small business environment, that entrepreneurial spirit. So their presentation was second to none. I wish you all could have seen it. They did a professional job, very courteous, and I think they're a perfect fit for our community. So when you look at the bottom line is at the worst case scenario, say for instance, the roads, there was just something that went wrong with it. Worst case scenario, we still make out very well as a community, and I'll be supportive of it.
Thank you, Todd. David?
Yeah, real quick, I don't want to add too much more, but just like some of these guys, I've been here 20 years, and I've been basically on this side of town, so I've been at 69 and 116th Street, so 116th and 106. I utilize that just like a lot of people, and at different times, going back and forth to work. The only thing I'd add is we are doing some significant improvements, I think, to 116th Street, 106th Street. We're also looking at our long-range traffic plan, which does include improvements not just to intersections, but also at different times when they are needed to 106th Street, both east and west of the interstate. It's being looked at, it's being reviewed. A lot of times when people pull those documents up and it has traffic councils for 20 years into the future. That's not to say that some improvements aren't needed now, but we are doing that. We are looking at that and reviewing that. So I wanted to point that out. Also to the Spyglass residents, if you want to email us, I know that Jeff mentioned, I know that he and I have worked a little bit with some other residents on making some connections. There's some a couple areas, but it required some of the other residents of the neighborhood to get involved. And that was just a loose discussion in the beginning, but if you'd like to bring that up a little bit more, feel free to email me or Jeff, and we'll get into those conversations again. And then the other thing was, I'm an engineer, so I looked, this is just a building to me. A lot of people, it's IKEA, but to me it's a building that people go in and out of. So because of that, I've looked at the traffic with our traffic engineers, and the biggest thing that has been pointed out that I think notes merit is that IKEA is a little different than most retail, just because people go for 3 to 4 hours. It's like a Vegas casino. You go in, and 3 hours later you go out, and there's not a direct out. And I'm kind of laughing a little bit, but I mean that seriously in the sense that when you're there 3 to 4 hours, the number of parking spaces that they have, that's how the traffic is utilized differently. I've got all the numbers here. I can go through it. Email me if you want to go through it a little bit more. I'm not going to detail it here, but we have looked at that, and that's a big reason that hasn't been mentioned that I think the traffic is different. It's not just that we're saying that. It's that the type of user that goes in and how long they are in the store has a change in how people utilize the different intersections. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? If not, I'll go ahead and go to Rich. I just want to close with one thing, and maybe to add to Stuart's comment. I didn't want to let IKEA think that they had really not negotiated a good deal, but because I think when some of the concerns were raised, I think those of us on council were concerned about some of the timetable concerns, and I think what I wanted to stress to IKEA is that at least the mayor and staff felt very strongly that there was, integrity to what had been negotiated. And while we had concerns, they wanted to be respectful, and I think we as a council want to be respectful to what's been done. But I think for also those in the public, Fishers is changing. And while there are going to be continued requests for assistance, economic incentives that are going to be provided, I think there is a position that we're going to be taking where, we have tremendous momentum that's happening, and we are so glad that you're going to be a part of it. But I also think that because of what's happening, that's going to help make IKEA even that much more successful. So I wish to welcome you, and I also am going to support the project.
Thank you, Rich. Seeing no other comments, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 111615C.
Motion by Stewart, second by John. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed.
Thank you.
Make a motion to, on number 14, to have first reading on ordinance 11615A, which will refer to Plan Commission any very minor rezone requirements relative to the building and signage.
Thanks, Stuart. Any comments on that one before we move on? Okay, thank you. Moving on to that, what would be item 9, but we're going to make it item 8, the sewer rate ordinance. Oscar.
Good evening. For the record, Oscar Gutierrez, City Controller. This ordinance was introduced last month, and we are bringing it forward for a public hearing. Just to give a couple of highlights from the presentation, there hasn't been a rate increase since 1997, and in 2008 there was a decision made by this body to put it off due to the U.S. Financial crisis. This rate increase would translate.
I apologize, Oscar. Maybe it'd be best to take a 5-minute break while people exit, and then we can return to this, Pete. If that'd be all right.
That's fine. We'll take a very quick 2 or 3 minute break.
Thank you, Mayor.
Chris, how are you?
All right.
People have this no quantity of put it on this box. It's difficult to.
You ready?
I think so. There's.
So I don't know if I get into today's, could you direct me what answer you can specifically answer from people that I know?
It should be pretty well easy to note it, Oscar. We don't see anything or comment that they shouldn't.
Well, we shouldn't, but if there are points that are valid,
yeah, and I'll just kind of note.
So, for example, I know that. But we don't have meters, so
we've already talked about that. I knew what's coming there. She called me too, by the way. So. We have moved item number 9 up on the agenda. I'm going to do just a first and second reading, just to comply with the public hearing notice on that. And we'll let it roll to another council meeting according to my attorney. That's the way we want to proceed. So Oscar, I'll let you go ahead and frame this item.
Again, Oscar Gutierrez, City Controller. As I was saying, there hasn't been a rate increase since 1997. In 2008, there was a decision to put it off. The $5 rate increase to an end user, which we have done our due diligence, and we have our consultants from Policy Analytics here Bill Sheldrick and Jason O'Neill, that would be happy to answer any additional questions specific to the rate study. The $5 end user fee would translate into a $5 end user not only to the Fishers utility, but also to the HSC utility as well. The only members that would see any less than the $5 would be the apartments, as they only get charged 75% of that, so they would only be seeing a $3.75 increase. If there are any questions for me or our consultants from Policy Analytics, I'd be happy to entertain them at this point prior to doing the public hearing.
Okay. We'll go ahead and open it up for public hearing unless the council has questions for wait till after public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Please come to stage and name and address for the record. Please give any comments as it relates to this matter only.
We also have a sign up specific to this matter as well.
Anyone wishing to speak on the sewer increase topic?
President Peterson, members of City Council. My name is Alan Hux. I'm an attorney with Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister, and I'm here on behalf of the Indiana Apartment Association and specifically owners of apartment complexes being served by the utility, namely the Ackerman Group, the Flats at Fishers, Edward Rose and Son, Bella Vista, Flattery and Collins, the Depot, Regency Windsor, Sun Blessed Apartment Homes, Regency Windsor, Sun Lake, and Sentinel Real Estate, Lantern Woods. This represents approximately 2,203 apartment units in Fishers that are being served, and the questions and concerns we have about the rate increase and really the underlying rate ordinance that is being considered tonight. The first thing that I would say is that I would bring to the council's attention, I brought it to your attorney's attention, that I don't believe that the proper notice was given to inform the public of this hearing. The statute or the notice that was presented in the opinion or in the packets, the handouts, indicated that there was a notice published, which is fine, and it also indicated that a notice was sent to in the bill for each of the users of Hamilton or of Fishers Utility, a notice that indicated that there was a public hearing tonight and that they were able to come to speak on behalf of that. However, the statute requires that in the event that there are people outside the city limits of a municipal utility that passes and utilizes 36-923 to pass their rate ordinance, that they have to mail to the users of the works for service property located outside the municipal corporate boundaries. And based upon the information that I was able to get in the short time that we were retained to speak on against this rate increase, is that in that notice that is mailed to each of the users, the statute 8-1.5-3-8.1 states that notice mailed under this particular subdivision must include a statement that following adoption of the ordinance, the users described in subdivision 3, and that's users outside the municipal boundaries, may be entitled to petition the commission, the IURC, under section 3 of this chapter to review and adjust the rates and charges imposed upon the users. If the petition under 8.2 of this chapter or 36-923-26-1 with respect to the same rate ordinance has not been filed. In other words, if there's no appeal of this rate ordinance filed, this notice must have given notice to the people outside the municipal boundaries of their rights, and based upon what was presented in the packet that was sent out, this particular notice was not provided. So I guess one of the first things I would say is that without a proper notice of this hearing, I would be concerned that there would have to be another public hearing. I did, on the phone today, request that the hearing be postponed or tabled, but that request was turned down. One of the issues that we have with the apartments is that the statute for municipal utilities requires that the rates be fair and equitable. And this rate increase that is being proposed is, we do not believe is fair to the apartment users based upon the fact that you are raising the rates to the individual residential units by approximately 20%, and you're raising the rates to the apartment complexes 25%. In fact, you're even raising the wholesale rate by 47%. And as in looking at the rate structure and the methodology that the rate ordinance is looking at, it is based upon EDU fees, and it's based upon the design criteria set forth in IC or 327 IAC, which bases the rates based on the type of facility it is. And as being fair and equitable, we look at restaurants, and they are charged based upon the number of employees they have, whereby the utilization of the sewer is going to be based upon the number of patrons that they come through. So even in the design criteria, it's based on the number of seats and not the number of employees. So in fact, you are having the residential users and the apartment users subsidizing the commercial units of restaurants because they're not paying what we would consider their fair share of the amount of flow that they're putting through their restaurant. So again, we would urge that the council take a different look at this, take a different look at the rate methodology that is being used. It was indicated earlier today, or earlier in the meeting, that this rate increase is being used for capital projects. Well, our clients, these apartment complexes, have been here for a number of years. Some are new and some are not. But to charge them to pay for future and increasing the amount of the flow that will be taken in these lift stations, it would appear to be more equitable to maybe address those charges through your availability fee. Based upon your use resolution, it is approximately $2,400 today. I'm aware of other districts that have what they call system development charges, or that are much higher. Some have system development charges divided between availability in the plant and also interceptor charges, so that the people who have been residents of the town and now city of Fishers for a long time aren't paying for the new people that are coming on. And so if you would, and I quickly calculated that if you would raise the availability charge by approximately $600 per EDU, you could probably equate with the number of users and gallons that are being projected based upon what information that was available. You could not necessarily have to raise the monthly rates and charges of all the residential and apartment complexes. There's also an issue with the apartment complexes that there's no provision to allow, they're charged based upon the number of units, but there's no indication or no way for them to adjust that based upon vacancies. Doing one study on one of the people that we represent, the charge for utilization based upon your rate methodology is 6 times higher than it is in the city of Indianapolis, whereby the yearly rate for sewer service for this particular apartment complex would have been, it goes from $4,000 a year from $763 a year for a city of Indianapolis utilization to $4,300 a year based upon your new rate increase. So we would urge that the rate methodology and the way that you are looking to raise the capital be reconsidered, that you not charge existing customers by increasing their rates on a monthly basis, and look at increasing the availability fee and make the rates fair and equitable as the statute requires.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak on this topic?
I'm Brian Martin. I'm the property manager at Lantern Woods Apartments. The one issue that we would have on this subject is typically utility charges are passed on to the residents. Because of a flat fee that Fishers has used in the past, a lot of apartment communities have set that same flat fee up into the chargeback into the lease agreements. Whereas with the water company, that's a floating rate that is calculated on a monthly basis. So those increases hit the residents right at the same time. This increase would take a year for us to work it through the apartment community. And to give you an example, in January, it would probably cost us somewhere around $1,600 to $1,700 to work all the way through to the end of the year where the expense was out of our system. So we would be very hopeful that something in a rolling situation could be implemented to help us. That would be about $10,000 to $12,000 for the year, which is equal to 1 month's sewer payment at this time on that subject as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
I guess I had 2 questions, Pete.
Again, just want to make sure, because there was some legal stuff brought up there, so before we respond, I want to make sure we go to our attorney to make sure we can respond. So, Chris, why don't you give me a little...
So, in response to Mr. Hux's 2 points that he brings up, I think one is procedural, the other is substantive. The first, as it deals with procedure, I'm not aware of our Fisher Sewer District utilizing and serving anybody outside of our city limits. When we proposed our notice for this hearing, we followed state statute by providing notice well within 10 days of this public hearing. In addition to that, we also provided notice in our sewer billing statements, both for the Fishers District and the HSE Utility District. Having said that, if there is somebody, assuming Mr. Hux's argument is right, that was served outside of our city district, and they are served by our utility, they would have received notice through our sewer billing statement. So although there might be a technicality, I believe that the overall intent of the statute was still met. Notwithstanding, I think Mr. Hux brings up a point that I can certainly look into for the procedural aspect. As it relates to the substantive aspect, as you all know, our sewer district is managed under the Indiana Sewage Act, not the IURC. Rate making is purely legislative. The state statute expressly permits the city to charge for sewer services based on a flat rate. You have that option pursuant to state statute. State statute gives the city authority to adopt different schedules of fees for various users of classification. So if the city would adopt the current ordinance that's in front of them, it's well within their statutory authority to maintain user classifications that charge a different user class based upon a flat rate. As Oscar has mentioned to you before in his presentation, and as Mayor Fadness has as well, the city is not proposing the reclassification of user fees here. We're proposing a sewer rate increase for the first time since 1997. We're increasing, we have a rate study justification that allows us to probably increase that rate more than the $5 that we're proposing, and then the proportional adjustments throughout, still being the lowest within central Indiana and Hamilton County. All apartment complexes are also treated the same, and I want to make that point clear too. According to our rate ordinance, we have a percentage that's charged to the EDU, which is 75% for all apartment users. The fees that are generated under this act have to be sufficient to pay all expenses that are incidental to the operation of the works, including the legal expenses, the maintenance costs, the operating charges, the repairs, the lease rentals, capital improvement projects. So we're all in this together, and I want to make that point that the ordinance establishes that we're all in this together and paying for our Sewer Usage Act.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, I think from the procedural standpoint, we'll do our due diligence. If there's some technical issue on third reading, we'll open it up for another public hearing. We'll notice appropriately, and we'll rectify that situation. As for any of the policy discussions that were brought up, certainly in consideration between now and third reading, if you'd like us to clarify anything that the gentleman brought up, we'd be happy to bring forward any additional information.
With that being said, I'll go ahead and open up for comments from council.
Yeah, I think going back, I was here when we did the 1997 rate increase, and I think one comment I wasn't clear about, one of the remonstrators who mentioned around restaurants, and so, you know, we've always had it based on the number of seats, not based on the employees, because patrons of the restaurant may utilize the facilities. The facilities are not restricted to just employees, and so that's always been a long-standing, and nothing's been changed here. And then the other issue I heard was maybe a concern about, and it wasn't clear to me on Brian's comment, whether or not his company had never had the pass-through, like you would consider the sewer rate a pass-through expense. It's a fixed fee, and so if it's passed through, it could be noticed to the employees irrespective of their lease. But if they have an all-encompassing lease, well then, yeah, then they are probably going to have some, but that's just the nature of the way they've struck the business. And now we'd be getting into wanting to see how your lease was structured and where's the profitability in your lease. So these kind of risks are part of business risks. If you are an apartment complex that have an all-in fee, then you're already capturing some sensitivity testing, and some people are higher, some are lower. You got some vacants, you got some filled, and your property taxes are based on one of three different approaches based on profit, vacancy, and other aspects. So I guess I'm not too tolerant or, open to that relevant argument if that's the case. So those are just a couple things that struck me, if I understood right. And I wasn't quite sure, maybe the lawyers can talk, if Alan, I missed his last name, if he was affirmatively asserting that he has a legal opinion that we didn't have the right notice, or was he just citing that he is concerned whether, and maybe at the very moment ignorant of, and the data that he's seen doesn't give him confidence that some appropriate notice was given. So I wasn't sure if he was affirmatively asserting something as a lawyer on behalf of his clients, or whether he was just raising the question as a level of uncertainty. So, I mean, after the meeting, you guys can talk.
Thank you, Stuart. Any other comments from council?
Just lastly, I think I would encourage, because we do have a very unique relationship with our collection zones. We are the treater and very capital intensive, but then we have two one collection district that is the cities. The other collection district, which is significantly larger, is HSE. They do serve some customers that aren't in incorporated city districts, but they are in our collections. They are in HSE's collection zone, which is sewage that we treat. Now that's between HSE and IURC for setting their rates, which their argument for rate adjustment is to IURC would be our wholesale rate to them. So I would encourage staff and legal in our rate to make sure that our relevant data for our $5 rate increase is appropriately represented from our interpretation of data to IURC so that it serves HSE. They're not going there on their own. We're going in there partnering and showing that we've already done all the calculations to justify I would expect, in the HSE collection zone, that they would be looking to pass on an appropriate $5 increase, the same as the Fishers collection zones. And then just lastly, I found a little bit of disconcerting the comparison of our rate and our sewer rates to Indianapolis sewer rates. You got two totally different communities, totally different infrastructure, totally different scales. Our rates are based, as our lawyer said, based on a rational nexus to collection and treatment and our capital. And you'd have to get into a rather extensive understanding of what Indianapolis's collection zones are, their infrastructure, their capital structure. I think it's off-putting or distracting to try to say that a rate in one community is different than your community. We have to base our rate on our collection, our capital, and the rational nexus of our costs, not just saying, hey, this community of over 800,000 has a different sewer rate than you do. So I just took a little exception to that.
Thank you, Stuart. Any other comments from council? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and move on. We've had public hearing. Thank you, Oscar.
Could I make a couple clarification points?
Sure, absolutely.
In regards to the restaurants, they are based on the water usage. That seat provision is in the unlikely scenario that a restaurant would operate under a well system, which at this time we have none. In regards to the HSC, we are working with HSC to ensure that when they do a tracker, it will translate to a $5 usage increase to the end user. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. All right, moving back to the item on the agenda, which is number 6 now. Is there a public hearing on this one?
No, there's not. There's you've got a request to approve a resolution for the fiscal plan, and then you have a request to approve the annexation of third reading.
Right, but typically, isn't there a public requirement on a fiscal plan?
You're correct to have the public hearing on the fiscal plan.
Okay,
Sorry.
you. Not that I don't know annexation. Go ahead.
So, for the record, my name is Kevin Stotts. I'm a planner in the Department of Community Development. Here tonight to present Grace Community Church voluntary annexation. The fiscal plan, as was mentioned, is included in your staff reports, and I won't go over the language there, but I am happy to answer any questions that you have. You're incorrect in saying that we do need to open it up to public hearing tonight, so I'll allow you to do that now.
I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Anyone feeling they want to have comments on the voluntary annexation of the Grace Church property, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I believe I can also probably entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve request R111615A.
I got a motion by John, second by Todd. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Item number 7. I think I can, it's a third reading, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I can entertain a motion on that as well. Motion by Eric, second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8. Is this the same one now?
Yeah.
Is this a public hearing as well, or just a second and third reading?
Second and third reading only. We've had public hearing at Plan Commission last month.
Public hearing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion on this one as well.
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9. We already did. Okay, item number 10. Welchel Springs. And again, this one would need a public hearing as well then. Okay.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklakowski, a planner with the Community Development Department. The item before you tonight is looking to adopt the fiscal plan for the 81-acre Welchel Springs Part 2 annexation.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Thanks, Adam. I don't mean to jump in, but I think we've heard Welchel Springs enough. So, I mean, unless Steve wants to come up and say something, I don't think he needs to. I'll go ahead and open up for public hearing on the fiscal plan for this voluntary annexation of Welchel Springs. All those wanting to come up and speak, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion on item number 10.
Motion approved.
Motion by John, second by Todd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we're on to item 11. This is the same property, correct, Adam?
Yes, sir.
I'll entertain a motion on item 11.
Motion to approve ordinance 101915A.
Motion by John, second by Todd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Yep.
Can you just remind us where we are on the zoning?
Yes, Mr. Leza, the zoning has been previously approved. Yeah.
Last week and went through planning commission a couple times. Yeah, we went through a number, right. Well, it did go through some changes for sure. It went back to planning commission due to a couple realignments of some lots, but it's been pretty thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, no, I just,
Yep.
timing of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was some cul-de-sac changes.
Yep. Yeah, frontage wise. Okay, we're on to item number 12, rezone of a portion of property south side of Southeastern Parkway, east of Oleo Road. And this is just a first reading, Chris? Okay, thank you.
Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Stotts, a planner in the Department of Community Development. As mentioned, I'm here tonight to present the first reading for the proposed rezone of the site located as shown here, outlined in red, which I understand is a little difficult to read. The area is located off of exit 210. It is currently zoned planned unit development residential, identified as the Avalon PUD. The request tonight would be to rezone that to planned unit development mixed use, which would be identified as College Park Church PUD. The original Avalon PUD, so first let me take a step back, and this request to rezone would be site-specific to the 37 acres outlined here in red. The PUD, instead of varying from the existing Avalon PUD, we've decided to go away from those standards, which originally had contemplated 186 townhomes on the site. So if you look at the concept plan to the left here, you'll see the townhomes and the site layout for that proposed use. Before you tonight, College Park Church's request to rezone would allow the R2 zoning district and development standards of the Unified Development Ordinance to apply to Area B, which is everything through here. Everything outside this is Area A. The Area A has been identified as having C3 commercial uses and following the development standards for the C3 zoning district in our Unified Development Ordinance. The purpose for this rezone would be to allow College Park Church to locate their Fishers campus to this site within Area B, but also to provide a small 4.2 acre commercial use along Southeastern Parkway. That 4.2 acres was actually suggested by staff to help provide and continue some commercial uses we've established to the north and then also to the west, although this is also a PUD. It falls within the Saxony PUD, so fully intend and is available to develop as commercial mixed use as well. In the staff report outlined there, you will see the R2 uses permitted for the larger Area B site. However, for Area 2, the C2 permitted uses have been listed in the report as well, with some of them being omitted as far as fuel cells, grocery, convenience mart, mortuary, packaged goods. We have asked that we continue to work with the petitioner to maybe limit those uses a little bit farther as we work our way through the Plan Commission public hearing and then before we come back to you before second and third reading. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I will turn it over to Steve Harden, who is representing the petitioner tonight. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner in the law firm of Fagery Baker Daniels. Pleased to be representing College Park Church this evening. As Kevin mentioned, we appreciate the staff and the city leadership providing guidance on this project. With me this evening is Chris Beals. He's the campus pastor for College Park Church, and also from the development team from the church, Bill Armstrong and Todd Finolio are here. I won't go into any more details really than what Kevin did. I did hear him say, I think at the beginning, mentioned C3 uses and then later said C2. It is C2 uses, not C3. And so he's correct that those are the uses that are listed. There are already some that are stricken through because that was from some input from a neighbor that had great involvement in this project when it was originally approved. So that's why you see those certain uses already struck through. And we've shared with Kevin that we are more than happy to talk with him about any other uses that the city might like to see not included. One of the reasons, obviously, C2 lists permitted use as a place of worship. One of the ideas here was to, have some tax-generating, job-creating uses in that area A, and so we'll work with Kevin and the staff between here and Planning Commission to clean that up a little bit as well. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have for us. Otherwise, we look forward to going through the process as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Steve or the staff? Yep.
Just real quick, when it does go to Planning Commission, we can talk about this a little bit more, but when I look at the uses, just make sure dry cleaner is a drop-off. We've had that on a couple of others. And then I understand that the other gentleman had stricken some of the things on here, but public safety, I don't know if we need anything for the fire department or something like that. I always think of that for that use and in that area. I don't know if that's needed. We could, if it's a specific use, we could go back. And then also I'm kind of thinking through the commercial. And the reason I bring this up is if you go to 116th and Allisonville, and 15 years ago it was a great idea to put, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I shouldn't even say it that way, but all the retail was south of 116th Street. You had it at the node, but then also you brought it south. And then through regeneration, some of that is the demand isn't there as much. So when you continue to increase retail, what seems great today, 15 years from now, might not be the best thing. We just need to think through that. And then also, if it is to be included, let's just think through whether you have the church in the current layout with a little strip of commercial in front, or do you bring the church over to the side because it's all open now because it's not built, bring it over to the side and then combine the commercial areas so that it's a bigger node so that you could have some flexibility to what could go there. So those are the few things we can talk about at Planning Commission.
David? Stuart?
Comment, maybe pick up on Dave's last comment, where the proposed concept plan has a retention pond, which is outside of, I don't know if that's floodplain, Steve, or, on the left you got the dark area, the topography there is very dramatic. So the issue is there another opportunity to move that retention pond elsewhere such that you can maximize another commercial lot there that becomes more tax generating and benefits the church, et cetera. Just generates more transactional value and tax value for the community. The other thing would be maybe you have to have some shared parking because maybe the time and usage of parking for the church versus the commercial lots would be compatible. So you could maybe have less parking on what is maybe defined here as the church property if you had some shared parking and therefore be able to move the retention pond somewhere. So I just think maybe if you could explore some of these options, really with the gain of having more commercial taxable real estate in that area.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. And the only comment that I would have, and then Rich, I saw that you wanted to jump in, was to the western edge. Obviously, you're butting right up next to the Saxony development, which we know is zoned for a great number of things. Let's anticipate buffering by the church there, since if that's where they want to go put the building itself, that they don't come back to us and say, well, we can't put that in over there without putting a massive amount of trees and everything else. Let's anticipate a little bit of that buffering as we go along on that side. And now, Rich?
I just wanted to maybe speak to your point, Stuart, but also maybe piggyback what David had mentioned. And I had mentioned this to Bill when we discussed the project, but while I'm appreciative that they're allowing for some commercial on the site, one concern I would have is that the church not lose its identity and being located behind commercial lots that may or may not develop in some sort of time frame. And honestly, I think we can all relate to some of the experience even along 116th Street where the Promise Church, is back behind there. And I think that really doesn't do our community the full service because I think it is important that there is an identity there. I just want to balance that commercial, and believe me, I'm a commercial guy, as you know, and so I would want to balance the effort, if you will, that we place on that commercial.
Good discussion. I mean, I would just add good points, but they give rise to other thoughts, right? I mean, in today's point, my comment wasn't about it has to be all commercial retail. It could just be appropriate commercial that's tax generating. And then I would just say, hey, the church as an entity, might be served for their mission and vision if they had more revenue coming in from however those outlots. So I'd leave it to their vision of what they think their church's identity should be, and I wouldn't impose my vision on them. If they want to sell they want to sell the outlots, or if they want to keep them for church use, then they'll keep them for church use. If they want to sell them, then bring revenue in for their mission vision of their, then I would be open. I'm not going to impose. Flexible.
Any other comments? I have a motion to have
First reading.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Moving on to item, what would now be 15. I think it's probably back to Oscar again.
Again, for the record, Oscar Gutierrez, City Controller. The ordinance you have in front of you is to issue a $1 million GO bond that will be paid off within 1 year. This is something that we have been working with the mayor to try and address some of the road infrastructure around the city. Currently, we are budgeting $1 million to go towards road resurfacing across the city, and as it currently stands, that it has been identified that it's not enough to maintain our current infrastructure. While we cannot just increase our budget any higher than the 6-year non-farm tax income, we have to find ways to be able to fund this. So this is a way to fund $1 million for next year's improvements that will not result in a tax increase based on the 64 cents that were passed by this body last month. So this would fit within our 64 cents as a unit that we passed, and would allow us the opportunity to use this money for road infrastructure and nothing else other than what would be considered filling potholes or resurfacing. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have regarding this mechanism we're exploring.
Chris?
Not only does this include a public hearing, but it also contemplates a suspension of the rules.
Okay. Well, let's take care of the public hearing first, and I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Elaine Viscant, 10734 Northampton Drive, Fishers. It's not concerning the bond itself, but it's concerning the way you're tracking the jobs that are being done. I was woken up one morning very early, and I called the town of Fishers to find out what was going on. And they said that they were resurfacing my subdivision. And according to the guy that was doing it, it was resurfacing of the subdivision. As it turned out, it was a half a street for 2 blocks in 2 different directions. So I hope you have a better tracking system than that.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I will entertain questions and comments from council.
Maybe it's more technical for you or John or some from the finance committee. Is this so going to the GO actual bond that you said very short term? Right. How does that be optimal to just a ban? There would be some short term debt relative to the interest rates that are in the market.
So just a ban is ultimately a temporary loan for what will eventually become a full bond issue. So this just bypasses that step, as we're going to only be doing a 24-month, 12-month borrowing. So we get distributions twice a year, and we would line up the payments for this within those to tax distributions. And again, this falls into the 64 cents that we are levying for our citizens. So a ban would be an additional step that would have a cost of issuance that would decrease the amount of money we would have available to use for the road. I hope that answers the question.
Couple things here, Stuart. Because the nature of this is almost in perpetuity, all things being equal, if AV grows at the rate that we think and tax rates stay stable, you could see this $1 million being built into our budget on an annual basis. So one of the things we're exploring right now is how do we mitigate or limit the amount of issuance costs that could come with this type of financial tool? So whether we look at a private placement or whether, there's a million different things that we can look at in terms of the actual financial mechanism going forward, but we need to get this off the books and onto the tax rolls yet by the end of this year for this upcoming year. But I think even next year, as we think about this from a long-term perspective, we're probably going to evaluate a lot of different ways to be able to do this, but make sure of that $1 million we're getting the maximum amount put on the roads and less of it, with bond attorneys and things like that. So we're going to continue to evaluate that.
I guess that was at the heart of it too.
Yeah.
It's just the issuance costs are $1 million when instead of $6 million.
Yeah.
So it's $1 million.
And if we know that this is in perpetuity, I've already had the conversation with bond counsel saying, look, if we do this every year, is there some sort of fixed limited cost, because we know that every year you're going to do this. It's somewhat of a boilerplate mechanism. So we're going to negotiate and talk through all those things so that we can get the maximum amount of money every year on the roads and not in the issuance costs.
Any other questions from council?
Not really a question, Pete, but just just a statement. I want to commend Oscar and Scott for going through these issues, because we've talked about it before. Fishers is getting to the point where our roads are getting to the age where we need to increase our maintenance budget. This identifies that, and it helps put together a mechanism so that we can do that. There are certain things in the budget that can only be used for road construction, not maintenance. It doesn't make any sense. We won't go through it at this hour, but this provides a mechanism to do additional maintenance dollars, and it gets it to the point where it needs to go. On top of that, Jeff Hill has worked through different items so that we have a list of exactly which roads need to be done when. And the other thing that I think this will help with is some subdivisions, you'll have a patch here and a patch there, where it's better, whether it's a whole subdivision or certain streets, we need to do the entire street at once. So this allows us to do that, so you don't have just kind of a piecemeal that some areas do now. So I want to commend you, Scott and Oscar, for putting together a mechanism, and I think it's going to help, because we're to the age now, once we start to do this, it's going to help aging subdivisions age well, and this will help.
Thank you, David. Any other comments from council?
The only thing I'd comment is even though we are incurring debt, that's going to be paid off within the year. So it's not something that's going to be evergreen, if you will, from that
That's
standpoint.
where it's just literally a way to increase our operational usage.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
I have a motion to suspend rules. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All any opposed? None opposed. That motion passes. Can I have a motion on the item on the agenda?
Making a motion to approve ordinance 111615B.
Motion by John, second by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 16. Request to approve ordinance additional city funds. That's you, Oscar.
Thank you, and again, for the record, Oscar Gutierrez, City Controller. The ordinance you have in front of you sort of goes into the whole theme of usage fees. Road impact fees have very limited usage that we are able to do. We can't use these type of funds for road resurfacing, filling potholes. It can only be done for new infrastructure. So what we've done in conjunction with engineering is to identify specific items that we could use this funding for that would relieve the need for borrowing. And what this request is for $800,000 to be used from the cash balance on the road impact fees to go towards projects that fit the criteria for road impact fees. And the second item is for $19,000 that the court faced a delay on billing from Hamilton County, so that's a very small amount and a technicality. But the meat of this is the $800,000 that we've identified a good use for the road impact fees.
I notice this also has a public hearing requirement, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments limited to this item on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And any questions or comments or a motion from council? Motion by Stewart, second by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 17. Request to approve resolution authorizing transfer of interest on real estate.
This is the final item. Again, Oscar Gutierrez, City Controller.
You covered the last half of the agenda, Oscar.
I'm sorry to keep you here. This is just a statutory requirement for the lease deal. We specifically related to the 96 in Allisonville bond project. We are going to be selling the bonds permanently on Thursday. This is a project that has been completed and had previously been funded through bond anticipation notes. This is in order to complete the lease with RDA. The RDA has convened earlier this week, or last week, and accepted the property should you decide to transfer it over.
Any questions, comments for Oscar or a motion?
I have to say Oscar may be a little glum tonight because he was trying his darndest for us to get an upgrade in ratings from Standard & Poor's. And we got the same rating that we've had, which is an excellent rating, AA+, which is extraordinary for a city, and he was shooting for AAA. And I think we came close, but we just didn't quite get there. So if Oscar's doesn't have quite the perk in his step that he normally does, it's because of that. But we will live to rate again. He's not giving up.
Actually, my appeal was I appealed it twice, and it got denied twice. But it was a heated discussion prior to this meeting. But AA+ is it's a very good rating, and I'm happy with it.
Oh, I could say something. Any comments, questions, or a motion from council?
Just a comment for Oscar and work for legal counsel and Scott Patterson on Mary Joe. This had a unique, now that we're more moving into the bonds, then this had a unique kind of relationship with River Place.
Yeah, this is
I just say review the file, make sure all the
so
applications are right.
understood and done. Let's put it that way. So we're on it.
Any other comments, questions, or motion from council?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Stewart, second by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Any unfinished or new business? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
John, second by Todd. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Yes.